We live in a world where justice can be manipulated, where crimes can be planned with precision. But in the end, truth has a way of rising to the surface. In the quiet town of Moscow, Idaho, 4 college students were brutally murdered in their sleep. The horrific crime shook the small community, sending ripples through the country. What seemed to be a senseless act of violence would soon reveal itself to be the work of someone far closer to the victims than anyone could have imagined. A PhD student sits in a criminology classroom, analyzing case studies of the world's most notorious killers. He takes meticulous notes on their methods, their mistakes, their psychological profiles. His professors praise his analytical mind, his deep understanding of criminal behavior. His classmates see him as the quiet, intellectual type, someone destined for a career in law enforcement or academia. But what they don't see is the darkness brewing behind his scholarly facade. What they don't realize is that he's not just studying these cases to understand them, he's studying them to perfect them. This is the chilling story of Bryan Kohberger, a man who transformed from student of crime to perpetrator of one of the most shocking murders in recent American history. On November 13, 2022, 4 vibrant college students went to sleep in their beds in Moscow, Idaho, never knowing that their final moments were being orchestrated by someone who had spent years learning exactly how to kill and disappear without a trace. This is the story of how academic brilliance collided with pure evil, and how one microscopic mistake brought down what was meant to be the perfect crime. Kaylee Marie Gonsalves radiated the kind of magnetic energy that drew people into her orbit. At 21, she was weeks away from graduating from the University of Idaho and starting her dream job at a tech company in Austin, Texas. Her Instagram was filled with countdown posts, 3 weeks until Texas. She had written just days before her death, accompanied by photos of her apartment hunting and job preparation. Born in Rathdrum, Idaho, Kaylee was the oldest of 4 children who naturally fell into the role of protector and guide. Her parents, Steve and Christy, remember a daughter who never met a stranger, who could make anyone feel welcomed and valued within minutes of meeting them. She had that rare combination of fierce loyalty and boundless optimism that made her friendships feel like family bonds. Her relationship with Madison Mogen was the stuff of storybooks. 2 girls who met in 6th grade and became inseparable, planning their entire futures around maintaining their friendship. They had coordinated their college schedules, lived together, and were preparing to move to Texas together after graduation. Their social media was filled with matching outfits, inside jokes, and the kind of authentic joy that can't be manufactured. Madison "Maddie" Mogen embodied everything beautiful about being young and full of dreams. The 21-year-old marketing major from Coeur d'Alene had an artist's eye and an entrepreneur's ambition. Her photography skills had already landed her several paid gigs with local businesses, and she spent hours perfecting her craft, capturing both the natural beauty of Idaho and the candid moments that make college life memorable. Maddie's parents, Ben Mogen and Karen Lamy, describe a daughter who saw beauty everywhere and had the talent to help others see it too. Her professors remember a student who brought fresh perspectives to every discussion, who had an intuitive understanding of how to connect with audiences through visual storytelling. Her final semester had been particularly exciting. She was building a portfolio for graduate school applications while working on a comprehensive marketing project for a local business. Her laptop, found after her death, contained carefully crafted application essays and creative projects that showcased her passion and potential. She was supposed to present her marketing strategy the week after she died. Zaina Alexia Kernadal approached life with methodical precision and unwavering determination. The 20-year-old marketing major from Post Falls, Idaho, worked part-time jobs throughout college, maintained internships, and carefully planned her course schedule to maximize learning opportunities. While her friends admired her dedication, Zaina never lost sight of enjoying her college experience. Her family remembers someone who was always planning ahead, always working toward her goals with quiet determination. She had already begun researching potential employers, networking with alumni, and building the professional connections that would launch her career after graduation. What made Zaina's story particularly heartbreaking was her relationship with Ethan Chapin. The two had found in each other the perfect balance of ambition and joy, supporting each other's goals while making sure to celebrate life's moments together. Their social media showed a couple genuinely happy, planning for a future that would never come. Ethan Alexander Chapin brought light wherever he went. The 20-year-old recreation, sport, and tourism major from Conway, Washington, had chosen a field that perfectly matched his personality. He wanted to spend his life helping others create positive memories and meaningful experiences. As one of triplets, Ethan had learned early the importance of cooperation and finding his unique identity within a close-knit family structure. His parents, Jim and Stacy, remember a son who could bring joy to any situation, who had a gift for making everyone feel included and valued. Ethan's professors described him as a student who brought enthusiasm to every class, who had a natural understanding of what it takes to create meaningful recreational experiences. He was actively involved in campus life, organizing group activities and making sure everyone felt welcome. His senior year was supposed to be his best yet, filled with internship opportunities and the start of a career helping others enjoy life to the fullest. While these four young people were building friendships, pursuing dreams, and planning their futures, Bryan Christopher Kohberger was watching them. Born November 21, 1994, in Albrightsville, Pennsylvania, Kohberger had transformed himself from an overweight, socially awkward teenager into what appeared to be a successful graduate student in criminology at Washington State University. But his transformation was more sinister than inspirational. His dramatic weight loss through boxing and strict dieting had coincided with an increasingly obsessive personality. His academic excellence in criminal justice and criminology wasn't driven by a desire to prevent crime or help victims. It was fueled by a fascination with the perpetrators themselves. Dr. Catherine Ramsland, who taught Kohberger at DeSales University, later recalled his unusual approach to case studies. While other students focused on investigative techniques, Kohberger seemed more interested in understanding how perpetrators operated, what mistakes they made, and how those errors could have been avoided. He would stay after class asking probing questions that made faculty uncomfortable. His master's thesis, examining how emotions and psychological traits influence decision-making when committing a crime, included surveys he had distributed to convicted criminals. The paper revealed his intense focus on understanding the criminal mindset from the inside out. At Washington State University, fellow graduate students found his research interests increasingly disturbing. He would ask hypothetical questions about crime scenarios that were unnervingly specific and tactical. His professors noted that his interests had shifted from general criminal psychology to very specific aspects of violent crime commission. Kohberger's move to Washington State University placed him just minutes from the Idaho border and the town of Moscow, where his future victims were living their lives completely unaware of the predator studying them. What began as ostensible academic research into college social dynamics gradually evolved into focused surveillance of specific individuals. Cell phone data would later reveal that Kohberger had been in the Moscow area at least 12 times between June and November 2022, always during late night or early morning hours. These weren't random academic field trips. They followed a pattern that suggested careful surveillance and planning. The house at 1122 King Road became the focal point of his obsession. Through online real estate listings and social media posts, he studied the layout, entry points, and escape routes. He used fake social media accounts to follow his victims, joined local Facebook groups where students shared information about parties and events, and even used dating apps to connect with University of Idaho students who might provide information about his targets. His digital footprint revealed an escalating pattern of obsessive behavior. He frequented online forums dedicated to unsolved murders, posting detailed analyses of how crimes might have been committed and what mistakes perpetrators might have made. He seemed particularly drawn to cases involving young victims and home invasions. The level of detail in Kohberger's surveillance was extraordinary and chilling. He knew that Kaylee and Maddie often went to the corner club on Saturday nights, that they had a routine of stopping at the grub truck for late-night food, and that they typically returned home around 2 a.m. He knew Ethan and Zaina's patterns, their favorite hangout spots, their schedules. Saturday, November 12, 2022, began as a typical autumn weekend day in Moscow. The weather was crisp and clear, perfect for University of Idaho students to enjoy their weekend before the final push toward Thanksgiving break. For the four friends, it would be their last day of life, spent in the innocent joy of youth. Kaylee and Maddie spent the afternoon getting ready for their evening out, doing hair and makeup, choosing outfits, taking photos together. Their social media posts from that day show two best friends excited about their night out, completely unaware they were being watched. Ethan and Zaina attended a party at the Sigma Chi fraternity house, enjoying time with friends and celebrating the weekend. Their posts show two young people having fun, laughing with friends, looking forward to the future with the confidence that comes from being young and in love. The evening unfolded exactly as Kohberger had observed during months of surveillance. Kaylee and Maddie went to the corner club, where security footage shows them laughing and having animated conversations. Around 1:30 a.m., following their usual routine, they left for the grub truck, where camera footage captured them waiting for their order, still animated and happy. At 1:56 a.m., they were picked up by their designated driver and returned to King Road. Security footage shows them arriving home in good spirits, carrying their food and appearing relaxed. They entered through the back door and went upstairs to Maddie's third-floor room. Ethan and Zaina returned around the same time from the Sigma Chi party, going to Zaina's second-floor room to settle in for the night. Friends who were with them described both as being in great moods, enjoying themselves and looking forward to the rest of the weekend. What none of them knew was that Kohberger had been monitoring their activities throughout the evening. Cell phone data revealed his phone moving throughout the area, suggesting final surveillance before implementing his plan. At 2:47 a.m., he turned off his phone. Investigators later determined this was to prevent location tracking during his crimes. At approximately 4 a.m. on November 13, 2022, Bryan Kohberger arrived at 1122 King Road with a military-grade Ka-bar knife and years of academic preparation for what he was about to do. His approach reflected months of planning. He entered through the sliding glass door on the second floor, a vulnerability he had identified during his surveillance. Moving with the confidence of someone thoroughly prepared, Kohberger navigated the house in darkness using his knowledge of the layout. His first targets were Ethan and Zaina in Zaina's second-floor bedroom. The attack was swift and brutal, designed to neutralize them quickly before moving to his primary targets on the third floor. After killing Ethan and Zaina, Kohberger moved to the third floor where Kaylee and Maddie were in Maddie's bedroom. The attack on these two young women was particularly vicious, reflecting what investigators determined was a more personal motivation. They represented everything he felt had been denied to him. Throughout the attack, Kohberger displayed the controlled violence his academic studies had taught him was characteristic of organized killers. He moved methodically, completed his crimes, and prepared to escape while maintaining discipline to avoid leaving obvious evidence. But despite his preparation and academic knowledge, Kohberger made critical errors that would lead to his capture. The most significant was leaving behind the leather sheath for his Ka-bar knife next to Maddie's body. This piece of evidence contained microscopic amounts of his DNA, skin cells that had transferred from his hand to the sheath's snap mechanism. During his escape, he also failed to account for surviving witnesses. Dylan Mortensen, one of the first-floor roommates, was awakened by sounds from upstairs. In her sleepy state, She initially attributed the noises to typical college house activity. But most significantly, she observed a figure leaving the house. A tall, thin man dressed in black with bushy eyebrows, walking toward the back of the house. The discovery of the bodies came at 11:58 a.m. on November 13th, when friends arrived to check on the residents after they failed to respond to calls and texts. The scene that greeted first responders was one of unimaginable horror. For young people, full of life just hours before, brutally murdered in what should have been the safety of their own home. Moscow police immediately recognized they were dealing with something unprecedented. This small college town of 25,000 had never seen anything like this. The crime scene was methodically processed, with investigators spending days documenting every detail, collecting every piece of potential evidence. The initial investigation faced enormous challenges. The house contained 6 residents and had been the site of parties and gatherings, meaning countless people had been inside recently. DNA evidence from multiple individuals was present throughout the house, making it difficult to isolate evidence left by the killer. The knife sheath found next to Maddie's body became the crucial piece of evidence. The Idaho State Lab extracted a single source of male DNA from the button snap of the sheath, DNA that didn't match any of the victims or other residents of the house. This unknown male DNA profile became the key to solving the case. As news of the murders spread, the University of Idaho campus and the Moscow community were gripped by fear. Students left town early for Thanksgiving break. Parents drove hundreds of miles to bring their children home, and those who remained lived in constant anxiety. The killer was still out there, and no one knew if he would strike again. The Idaho State Police assembled a task force unlike anything the region had ever seen. FBI behavioral analysts joined local investigators, bringing expertise in serial crimes and mass homicides. The investigation became one of the most intensive manhunts in recent memory. Investigators worked around the clock, following up on thousands of tips, conducting hundreds of interviews, and analyzing mountains of digital evidence. They studied the victims' social media, their phone records, their daily routines. They interviewed friends, classmates, professors, and anyone who might have information about potential threats or suspicious behavior. The breakthrough came through genetic genealogy, a cutting-edge forensic technique that uses public genealogy databases to identify suspects through their family trees. Investigators uploaded the unknown DNA profile from the knife sheath to genealogy databases, searching for relatives who might lead them to the killer. This process, which had solved cold cases decades old, worked remarkably quickly in the Idaho case. Within weeks, investigators had identified potential family connections and were building family trees that might lead to their suspect. As they worked through the genealogical matches, one name began to stand out: Bryan Kohberger. His age, physical appearance, location, and background made him a person of interest. When investigators began looking into his life, they discovered his academic focus on criminology, his proximity to Moscow, and his suspicious behavior in the weeks following the murders. As investigators delved deeper into Bryan Kohberger's background, the evidence began mounting. His cell phone data revealed a damning pattern of behavior: at least 12 visits to the Moscow area between June and November 2022, always during late-night hours when he would have been conducting surveillance. Most significantly, his phone data showed him leaving his Pullman apartment around 2:47 a.m. on November 13th, just before the murders occurred. His phone went dark at that time, suggesting he had turned it off to avoid tracking. The phone remained off until 4:48 a.m., during the window when the murders took place. Investigators obtained video surveillance from businesses and traffic cameras throughout the region, building a timeline of a white Hyundai Elantra traveling between Pullman and Moscow during the early morning hours of November 13th. The car matched the description of Kohberger's vehicle. The most crucial evidence was the DNA match. When investigators obtained a sample of Kohberger's DNA from trash left outside his parents' Pennsylvania home, laboratory analysis confirmed what they suspected. It was a match to the DNA found on the knife sheath at the crime scene. The statistical probability of the match being coincidental was approximately 1 in 5.37 octillion. Additional evidence included Kohberger's online activity, which showed searches for information about the case, the victims, and law enforcement investigative techniques in the days and weeks following the murders. His academic background provided him with knowledge of criminal investigation methods, but it also created a digital trail of suspicious behavior. On December 30th, 2022, 47 days after the murders, law enforcement agencies coordinated a carefully planned arrest operation. Kohberger was at his parents' home in Albrightsville, Pennsylvania, having driven cross-country shortly after the murders in what investigators believed was an attempt to distance himself from the crime scene. The arrest was carried out by Pennsylvania State Police with assistance from FBI agents. Kohberger was taken into custody without incident at 3 a.m., still asleep in his childhood bedroom. The timing was deliberate. Law enforcement wanted to minimize the chance of resistance or evidence destruction. When officers searched Kohberger's room, they found it meticulously clean and organized, consistent with the obsessive personality traits that had characterized his adult life. His car had been thoroughly cleaned, and he had disposed of potential evidence, but the DNA evidence from the knife sheath was impossible to eliminate after the fact. The arrest sent shockwaves through both the academic community at Washington State University and the families devastated by the murders. For the first time since November 13th, the victims' families felt a sense of hope that justice might be possible. Kohberger was charged with 4 counts of first-degree murder and 1 count of burglary. Idaho prosecutors announced their intention to seek the death penalty, citing the heinous nature of the crimes and the multiple victims. The legal proceedings were complicated by Kohberger's academic background and his understanding of the criminal justice system. He waived his right to a speedy preliminary hearing, likely buying time for his defense team to analyze the evidence and develop their strategy. Throughout the legal process, Kohberger maintained his innocence, but the evidence against him was overwhelming. The DNA evidence alone was virtually impossible to refute, and when combined with the cell phone data, surveillance footage, and behavioral evidence, it painted a clear picture of his guilt. The case drew national attention, with legal experts noting the strength of the prosecution's evidence and the methodical way investigators had built their case. The genetic genealogy technique that led to Kohberger's identification was praised as a landmark achievement in forensic science. Throughout the investigation and legal proceedings, the families of Kaylee, Maddie, Zaina, and Ethan showed remarkable strength and dignity. They became advocates for their children's memories, working to ensure that the victims were remembered for their lives, not just their deaths. Steve and Christy Gonsalves, Kaylee's parents, were particularly vocal in their pursuit of justice. They attended court hearings, spoke to media outlets, and worked tirelessly to keep pressure on law enforcement and prosecutors. Their strength in the face of unimaginable loss inspired others and helped maintain public attention on the case. The families also focused on preserving their children's legacies. They established scholarships, supported causes their children cared about, and shared memories that highlighted the joy and potential that had been stolen from the world. Ben Mogen, Maddie's father, spoke eloquently about his daughter's dreams and ambitions, ensuring that people remembered her as more than a victim. The Kernodle and Chapin families similarly worked to honor their children's memories while supporting the pursuit of justice. When Bryan Kohberger's trial finally began, the prosecution presented a devastating case built on scientific evidence, digital forensics, and painstaking investigative work. The DNA evidence was the cornerstone. The statistical impossibility of it belonging to anyone other than Kohberger made his guilt virtually certain. The prosecution methodically presented the timeline of Kohberger's stalking behavior, his presence in Moscow on the night of the murders, and the physical evidence linking him to the crime scene. Cell phone data, surveillance footage, and expert testimony painted a picture of premeditated, calculated murder. Kohberger's defense team struggled against the overwhelming evidence. They attempted to challenge the DNA evidence, question the genetic genealogy techniques, and suggest alternative theories, but the prosecution's case was too strong. The most powerful moments of the trial came when prosecutors presented evidence of the victim's final hours. Security footage showing Kaylee and Maddie laughing at the grub truck, social media posts from Ethan and Zaina at the Sigma Chi party. These images reminded everyone in the courtroom of the vibrant lives that had been lost. When the verdict came back, guilty on all counts, the courtroom erupted in emotion. The families of the victims wept with relief, knowing that justice had finally been served. The jury had seen through any attempts to create doubt and recognized the evidence for what it was. Proof beyond any reasonable doubt that Bryan Kohberger had brutally murdered 4 innocent young people. The sentencing phase of the trial was emotionally devastating as family members gave victim impact statements that brought the courtroom to tears. They spoke not of revenge, but of the futures that had been stolen, the grandchildren who would never be born, the contributions to society that would never be made. Steve Gonsalves spoke about Kaylee's excitement for her new job in Texas, how she had called them almost daily in the weeks before her death, bubbling with enthusiasm about her future. She was supposed to change the world, he said, his voice breaking. Instead, the world lost a light that can never be replaced. Ben Mogen described Maddie's artistic vision and her dreams of working in fashion marketing. He shared photos from her portfolio, showing the talent and creativity that would never reach its full potential. She saw beauty everywhere, he said. Her killer saw only darkness, and he tried to extinguish her light. But her beauty lives on in our memories. The Kernodle family spoke about Zaina's determination and work ethic, how she had balanced academic excellence with part-time jobs and internships, always working toward her goals. They described a young woman who had everything mapped out, who was going to make a difference in the world through her dedication and drive. Jim and Stacy Chapin struggled to find words to describe the loss of their son Ethan. They spoke about his joy, his ability to bring happiness to everyone around him, his plans to help others create positive memories through his career in recreation and tourism. Ethan made everyone feel included and valued, Jim said. The world is a darker place without his light. When the judge pronounced the death sentence, there was no celebration in the courtroom, only a sense that justice had been served. The families had never sought revenge. They had sought accountability. The legal system had worked, and the man who had stolen their children's futures would pay the ultimate price for his crimes. The conclusion of Bryan Kohberger's legal proceedings marked the end of a nightmare that had lasted over 2 years for the victims' families and the Moscow community. While nothing could bring back Kaylee, Maddie, Zaina, and Ethan, the certainty of justice provided a foundation for healing. The case became a landmark in forensic science, demonstrating the power of genetic genealogy and advanced DNA analysis to solve even the most carefully planned crimes. Kohberger's academic knowledge of criminal investigation techniques had ultimately been no match for the dedication and expertise of the investigators who pursued him. The investigation also highlighted the importance of community cooperation and advanced technology in modern criminal investigations. The combination of traditional detective work, cutting-edge forensics, and public vigilance had created an environment where even a seemingly perfect crime could be solved. For the Moscow community and the University of Idaho, the resolution of the case allowed for healing and moving forward. The campus implemented new safety measures, but more importantly, the community came together to support one another and honor the memories of the 4 students who had been lost. The victims' families channeled their grief into positive action. The Kaylee Gonsalves Memorial Fund supports young people pursuing careers in marketing and communications. The Madison Mogen Creative Arts Scholarship helps students with artistic talents achieve their dreams. The Zaina Kernadal Leadership Award recognizes students who demonstrate exceptional determination and work ethic. The Ethan Chapin Joy Foundation supports recreational programs that bring happiness to young people. As we reflect on this tragic case, it's important to remember that while evil exists in the world, it is ultimately no match for the combined forces of justice, community, and human resilience. Bryan Kohberger believed he could commit the perfect crime, using his academic knowledge to evade capture and escape consequences. He was wrong. The 4 young people he murdered had more impact on the world in their short lives than he will ever have. Kaylee's leadership and enthusiasm inspired everyone around her. Maddie's creativity and artistic vision brought beauty to the world. Zaina's determination and work ethic showed others the power of dedication. Ethan's joy and inclusiveness made everyone feel valued and loved. Their killer thought he could steal their futures and escape into the shadows. Instead, their memories continue to inspire positive change. Their families have found ways to honor their legacies, and their community has grown stronger in their memory. The investigation that brought Kohberger to justice represents the best of human cooperation and scientific advancement. Investigators worked tirelessly, using every tool available to ensure that justice would be served. The genetic genealogy techniques that identified him represent years of scientific progress dedicated to solving crimes and bringing closure to families. Most importantly, this case reminds us that justice, while sometimes delayed, ultimately prevails. The families of Kaylee, Maddie, Zaina, and Ethan endured unimaginable loss, but they never gave up hope that their children's killer would be caught. Their strength and persistence, combined with the dedication of law enforcement, ensured that Bryan Kohberger would face the consequences of his actions. The darkness he brought to King Road that November night has been replaced by light. The light of justice served, families finding peace, and a community that refuses to let evil triumph. Kaylee, Maddie, Zaina, and Ethan may be gone, but their impact on the world continues. Their killer will face the ultimate consequence for his crimes, while their memories inspire others to live with the joy, creativity, determination, and kindness they embodied. In the end, love conquered hate, light conquered darkness, and justice conquered evil. That is how their story truly ends, not with the tragedy of their loss, but with the triumph of everything they represented over everything their killer embodied. Their lives mattered, their dreams mattered, and their memories will continue to make the world a better place long after their killer has been forgotten. The case of the Idaho murders stands as a testament to the power of justice and the resilience of the human spirit. While we mourn the loss of 4 bright young lives, we can take comfort in knowing that their killer has been caught, convicted, and will pay the ultimate price for his crimes. Justice has been served, and their families can finally begin to heal, knowing that the monster who stole their children's futures will never hurt anyone else again. Their story reminds us to cherish every moment, to pursue our dreams with passion, to treat others with kindness, and to never give up hope that justice will prevail. In living these values, we honor their memory and ensure that their light continues to shine in a world that is brighter because they were in it, even if only for too short a time. What struck you most about this case? Do you think Kohberger's academic background made this case more disturbing? There's something particularly unsettling about someone studying crime to commit it better. Drop your thoughts below. Did this case change how you think about campus safety? About the power of modern forensic science? About the importance of never giving up on justice? And if you're a student reading this, please take safety seriously. Lock your doors. Trust your instincts. Look out for each other. Kaylee, Maddie, Zaina, and Ethan thought they were safe in their home with friends. Evil doesn't knock. What's on your mind after reading this? We'll be reading every single comment.